solution-focused language in organizations. And Alan Kay is on your screen, I hope. Richard is also on your screen, I hope. If not, as soon as they'll start talking, they're going to come somehow on the front screen, or you just can push your speaker view so you see them once they start the conversation. So when we talk about this session and how do we want to actually have it so it's as interactive as possible, an idea emerged, and I'm truly excited about it, and you'll figure it out why as soon as we start. But before that, a lot of you heard already Alan Kay introducing himself. I would say, Alan, do you want to add a couple of words now for everyone that just joined now and they haven't heard you talking to Elliot and Beverly and everyone and Rebecca before?
My only credentials for this presentation are that I'm a fully recovered advertising guy. 25 years ago. My colleague Richard will pitch himself the same way. And I was trained by some of the greats in solution focus 20 odd years ago in Toronto.
Beautiful. Richard, you are also recovered.
Alan's fully recovered. I'm a recovering ad guy, and I too was trained by one of the greats in solution focus, and that's none other than Alan Kay.
Beautiful. And this is how the loop closes, all right? We learn from each other. Beautiful. And what we're gonna try to do right now is just to have this topic of language and how do we use language in organizations. Alan has a lot of beautiful examples and a lot of them, and Richard also, and we had a session trying to put this together, and it was beautiful to see how more examples were emerging and more ideas, and this, and how about when we did this, and how you did this document, and how did you put this together. And there was another thing coming up, and that was, how about we do it extremely interactive. And Alan and Richard, they're going to do a simulation. They're going to play a small role. And I know they had a session together trying to see how this will run. And that's the first part of the interaction. The second part of the interaction is, I'm going to just say, get your chat rooms ready, because we're going to be part of the simulation. And we're going to put on pause at some point the conversation and see what do you think about it and how do you feel it should move forward. So Alan, do you want to introduce a bit the case that you put up together to show this conversation?
The big surprise you're going to get in this one is, you know all this language, it's just how do you make it work in an organization. So organization, and I'm only going to have a few slides, some of them I'm going to go through very quickly. What Richard and I do is what we call applications, because the client asks for it. How do you do strategic planning? Can we have customer experience development, team and organization development, all these things. Richard, because of his marketing background, is still very prominent in that area. And in fact, that's going to be our little case. There's an outfit in the States called ProSci, and they do a lot of change management stuff, training, and they're very good. And they say all change comes from personal transition. That's what we're trying to do. And it's best if you get executive engagement, you get leadership, you get sponsorship in, supervisor and staff level, give them the tools, and the individuals need awareness, knowledge, and motivation. An awful lot of change management is they come in and present their slides and let people get on with it. It doesn't work. And so no need to read too much of this piece below. It's just we use the language. If it works, go on doing it. If it doesn't, stop, do it and do something else, etc. And what will be different when it gets better. So that's the intro to the case study. We'll do the simulation just now. I'll take the slide off. And I'm a manager of an industrial company, business-to-business marketing. And I've seen an opportunity that for a number of years, and we really must get on with it. But I'm having trouble convincing my sales team to pay attention to it. And it is that we install big engines in factories and stuff like that. But increasingly, money's being made in what's called the after-sales service. And I have not been able to persuade my sales team to get out there and do it. And I'm hoping, Richard, that you're going to be helpful from a brand and marketing perspective by building a website and some advertising, if that's necessary, to help not only customers come to the organization for this after-sales service, it's a huge market, but get our sales team aligned with that. What do you say, Richard?
I want to pause for just one quick second to say, if it's not already obvious, that Alan's talking to me as though I'm an advertising agency guy, which I am, doing marketing consulting and helping clients with branding and advertising and building websites. So I would say, Alan, I'd be delighted to work with you on this. And I want to really get a lot of the details of the background of your situation, your challenge. But I want to start with just some questions about what's worked for you in the past when you've worked with vendors like me, with advertising agencies.
Yeah. Well, we actually had a consultant in a couple of years ago, and what he did was he was very helpful in selling in the idea into the organization. And that's why I'm thinking today you might be able to help with the, whether it's building a website, I don't know, but tools to help my team get on board and help them learn.
Usually, Alan, when we do something like this, we're communicating to an external audience, to consumers or businesses. But this is interesting. Your focus right now is on an internal audience, I guess, employees and stakeholders. Tell me more about why that's so important.
Well, I think that if we get the sales team up to speed, they're good people, but they have this block in front of them. Acquiring the customers. We already sell the engines to them. The issue is, how do we get the sales teams to go in and sell this after sales service before somebody else steals it from us?
Yeah.
So yes, a website's for external use, but it's both. We want to build awareness and get our team on board.
The sales team. So tell me just some nuts and bolts about the sales team. How many people on the sales team? Where are they?
10 of them.
10 of them.
Across the country.
And what do you most appreciate about them?
Oh, until recently, give them a task and they go crazy. I'm still not sure why they are intimidated by the after sales piece. Part of it, I think, is because there's so many competitors getting in there, so they're not used to that sort of thing. Having said that, I know that once they get it right, they will go at it. They're kind of like fox terriers. They dive in.
I'd love to hear an example of when you've seen them, when you've witnessed them being fox terriers.
Right. Well, there was a US company moved into Canada, and they were putting up lots of buildings across the country, and they had these need for machines and so on. Our guys, they beat the competition by a mile, just getting in there quickly, and setting up in a way that it worked for the client. It wasn't just sell the engine, it's installation and all that kind of stuff. So they are very good at it.
So in a normal case, I'm pausing again, in a normal case, I think I'd ask Alan a whole bunch more questions where I'm trying to unpack what's worked in the past, strengths, resources, assets, cases where they've had similar challenges in the past and they've done something successful, and try to bring those to the surface and have them there to leverage those. But just for the sake of this case, let's move on, and I'll ask some different questions. So Alan's told me all that stuff now. So Alan, I'm not sure what the communication solution is yet. We've talked about a website and some ads and maybe something on LinkedIn and obviously not obviously, maybe an event for the team. Give me a sense for the goalposts. What's going to be better or different as a result of this? Let's say it's 6 months from now and you and I are having a beer, and it's post-pandemic. Right. And we're celebrating the success. What are we talking about?
Well, first of all, as the president of this organization, I won't be phoning clients to try and persuade them to give us that after sales service. the guys will, and they are guys, of course, not of course, but they are. My emphasis will be helping them map out data analytics from the sales that they're achieving using analytics that they've done before, helping them understand how to convert that into action, how to close sales in this new thing. You know, the engine's in these clients' buildings, but it's a different person they're going to be serving. They're not serving the engineers who bought it. They're serving the mechanical engineers, etc.
What are the engineers who bought it? What are they saying about this 6 months from now? That tells you that this has been successful.
My life is much easier because maintenance of these things, they're well-made machines, etc., but they take a lot of effort. It is not just plug it in and play. So the client engineers and service people are going to be looking to our people for solutions to things that are related to the quality or the maintenance of the engine, because engines are attached to things, and so they need that kind of better understanding.
We know that salespeople are often, they have a healthy cynicism about people like me, about advertising and marketing people. Assuming that this is successful, what's your sales person, you're the head of sales, saying about me and this marketing effort?
The head of sales is saying, Alan, get out of my face. We're doing well. And they've increased our volume by 50%. They have acquired some new people to go in and do the work, and so on. So we're growing our competence in this second stage of maintenance, and it's helping profitability, obviously. But it means we're hiring new people, we're growing our competence and expanding the business.
You've got a team doing inside sales, customer support, you know, sort of on the front line, taking customer calls. They're often the ones who are, you know, really getting abused by customers. What are they saying down the road?
Months from now, that they've got new training, the training works, the customers are more cooperative, that we can now take initiative and help them, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You said something interesting. You said training. So you've done training initiatives, big organized training initiatives in the past, right?
Yeah. A number of years ago, we had being a consultant come in and help our guys learn to listen more carefully to clients to get the sales effort underway.
So
one of the things I've been saying, I'm hoping that some of that training and hiring and so on is going to be more diverse because we need, there's lots of new Canadians coming in that we could recruit for this kind of work, and also diverse in terms of gender. So we're not a male-dominated organization.
Right, right. Okay. That might be a good place to pause. I'm just, Alan, where else could we take this?
Well, let's pause on it now and switch to Cristina. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would ask you to stop for a second there.
Yep.
And I would ask now, first of all, I would ask anyone who would feel like, do you have now a question that you think that Richard should pose now to Alan? What would you ask now, Alan, further? So now you're instead of Richard, and he still wants to get some more things from Alan as information. As you've seen the study case, the case until now, or the simulation until now, is that Richard used some words. I'm not have a summary that we're going to go through after that, but he's just trying to get information. Is there a particular question that you feel Richard should now ask Alan? Just, you can type it in the chat or put your mic on.
And don't forget, in this case, this client is a willing participant. He's not reluctant to answer these questions.
Looks like there is a question there. comment there.
That is a great, it's already going great. The only possible change I might use is to ask Alan what would be different for him. What would he notice?
Well, my family might be happier with me, first of all, because it's been quite stressful, this block in the organization's growth. But I would notice that I'm actually grooming, helping some of the folks, the senior people, look at other ways of being involved in the management of the organization. Because we've run lean on management, I could see promoting some of these people into a position as we grow.
It's a great question, Laurie, and I would build on that based on Alan's answer. And since he's opening the door to talk about some of the other senior people in the organization, I'd then say, oh, tell me more about those senior people. Do you have a senior leadership team? And I'd go, I mean, if we had enough time, I'd go one by one and say, you know, suppose we asked so-and-so who's head of finance, what would they say would be working better? What would they say the goal of this initiative should be? And
you might, at that point, ask, can I interview them?
Right.
And guess what questions you ask?
Alan, we've done that a lot, by the way, where we've just done multiple interviews within one organization to get, you know, different views of the same.
So then there's another question or a continuation of that saying, this is the first time we hear about his family also. Would you ask about family too, or does that take it away from the business too much?
That's a good question.
Well, you know, if I've seem very stressed about the family, you might ask that. But essentially, you know, I'll say, well, my family will start talking to me again because I see them more or something like this. We don't want to head into that family therapy mode, but one of the things you can do is empathy. Yes, it must be complicated when you're having to put all this effort in and the folks at home are missing you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's also the question of how much do you feel like you're willing to share? Because I would say there's also a component of if I'm sitting in front of you, Alan, I feel like you're willing to share a lot because that's what you need in that second. I will also let you share it.
Yep. But don't forget, the client has asked for something very specific, a marketing campaign.
Yeah, true. Any other ideas? Any other questions that you would ask Alan? Or the client that is being played by Alan?
Just while we're waiting for that, can I make a comment, Cristina?
Please.
Yeah. In you know, in the world where Alan and I come from, though I know this is true in lots of other categories, but in advertising and marketing, oftentimes, you know, client organizations are asking their vendors and consultants, partners to do stuff for them, and the request is not clear because they're not clear what they want. Yeah. They're stuck. They may not say that they're stuck, but they're stuck. So these questions are so helpful to get them to see what it is that they want, and that turns into a brief, ideally, you know, a document on paper that has instructions for the vendor to go away and do stuff. In my case, it's advertising, but this could be true, obviously, for law firms and IT firms and HR consultants and really anyone who works with organizations.
And note that Richard has never mentioned what kind of website you need, what kind of campaigns do you think we should do. He might well say what's working about your current website, what's working about your existing campaigns, but you don't want to start moving into the production thing.
So totally. And I'll just add to that, the website example is a great example because so many times people will want to talk about how lousy their website is. And in my conversation, the first thing I do is I say, you know, we're going to talk about what's wrong with your website, but before we talk about that, let's talk about what's right about your website, what doesn't need to change, what doesn't need to be fixed. And I really have to push to keep them in that space. And sure enough, I come up with a list of stuff that's working, and then the list of stuff that needs to be fixed is shorter, and it costs them less because it's not broken.
In the previous session, Richard, Elliot was asking me questions, and one of the things about, he said, well, when was the first time you used solution focus outside of the therapy conversation? And I said, immediately I went to clients and I asked them questions, because any client can tell you all about the problems anytime you like. If you dissuade them from doing that by asking what's working, etc., you're building trust right away. And one of the reasons for that is they've got lots of suppliers who come and say, oh yeah, I can do that for you. And particularly consultants who come in and think they can tell you what to do. And it's often not what they really want.
Alan, I think that will take the moment, and I would stop still for a second. And that would be, so what Richard was just saying, I want to link it back to how the case started, because you said a couple of things, and then the first question that Richard actually asked was, what's worked in the past?
Yep.
So that's exactly to the point of, you haven't said, so, okay, so that's what you want, that's what I give you, but you went exactly through what's worked in the past. So tell me more about it, about the sales team. What do you most appreciate about it, and so on. So they were just the same solution-focused questions, but disguised into, we're just having a conversation about you wanting something new, which is a marketing service and marketing campaign. There are also, in the same time, two more beautiful questions in the chat, 3 now. When was there a change in the goals of the team before, and how did they manage to do what was useful?
That's a great question.
Then the next one, and then you can figure out how you want to pick that one up, Alan, and answer. I'm wondering how the company got the buy-in from the sales team when they succeeded before with something new. And then one more. So you said you wanted to increase the diversity stuff in your company. Can you tell me more about what that would look like if this were successful?
Yep.
So
don't forget, this is a conversation with a client that would take at least an hour.
Oh yeah, or more.
And then you propose to go back and ask the other senior people what they're looking for. So you're building the picture, and these are great questions. Thank you.
And I think that one other point that I noticed was very interesting, that the direction in which, Richard, you took Alan, in the sense of saying, okay, so training, you mentioned training. So what is with this training actually? Do you need training, or have you ever done training? So it just offers your customer, your client in front of you, the opportunity to explore other areas and figure out what exactly do you need, instead of just getting stuck to the marketing, because you went into training, recruitment, diversity. So all of these things, also senior staff. And that's, again, allowing and giving space to the client to just get that exploration and get that idea of what they want.
And to get, and again, we're doing it selfishly, because again, this is not a therapeutic thing, though it can be. We're doing it selfishly to get clarity on what the ask is, because now I've learned that adding a training component. So if I go away as a marketing agency and come back with a training booklet and a training script for a Zoom webinar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I know that that's potentially something that he's going to approve and pay for as part of the solution. Yeah. So I've just made life easier for me.
Yeah. And Richard, you know what I would build on that? It was a beautiful explanation earlier in one of the sessions from Andrew, when he was trying to say, you know, it's not about only selling my services, but it's about also supporting all of us, and just kind of like building up on what are the expertise of the others, and just knowing what other people are doing and what is their area of expertise. You can go back with a package or with something that fits better the needs, because as you said, you found that already, that he might need also training or any kind of support in recruitment. So they're all linked, and I guess in the end of the day, the feeling of the client is nevertheless being much more or better served than just coming and getting a website or a marketing campaign.
Let me
sorry, Richard, 2 things about that one is, sometimes the client's thinking, I know some trainers. So you want to find out if he's done it before, or she, what worked, so that you don't bring in, as Richard suggested, a training broker, etc. Because they, in this case, they might say, well, no, we already got that. But you also find there's somebody else after their resources. So you're not eliminating the competition. You're finding out what they're doing so it can fit with what you're doing.
And I just want to add, someone's eventually going to suggest this in the chat room, so let me anticipate it. I haven't used the scaling tool yet. I haven't used the scaling question. That's absolutely number one in my bag of questions to ask clients. So maybe Alan's showing me now training materials that he did last year, and I'm sensing that he liked them, but there could have been something better. And I start with the scaling questions. Alan, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is this isn't acceptable as a set of training materials for a corporation, and 10 is this should win an Academy Award for training materials, where would you say these training materials are, and get them to scale that, and then notch that up? And I find when I use the scaling question in these circumstances, it's amazing how specific people get with what's needed in terms of the improvement in the goal.
That's true, and I think that's a beautiful thing of anticipating and saying a scaling question did not came up until now, but indeed you had a couple of miracle questions in there, and you've had a couple of times when you tried to say, so who's noticing and what else? And the what else was, I would say, quite obvious, because you kept on going in a lot of directions with your client and with the exploration. Yeah. What I would be still curious about, it would be, so Alan, how did you feel? Did you feel heard? And like as a customer, when those words were used, because those were part of a vocabulary that we consider solution focused, but they actually were used in a completely normal organizational environment.
My line is I like what Richard was asking me, because he's talking about some things I haven't had time to think about, or I've not done them very well in the past. And so I'm glad he's expanding the conversation out there.
Now, Alan, if you put yourself in the shoes of your own clients, what would you notice from how they reacted to the kind of questions that Richard now simulated?
Well, let me just jump in. I often tell clients, because they ask you to come in and you speak to them and they think you're going to go away and write a proposal. And I say to them, no, I'll give you a rough draft of what I'm thinking about so far, just to make sure that I'm thinking about what you were talking about, but I really need to go and interview 2 or 3 of your senior people, and you repeat the process. Then you can write a proposal. And I have never seen a client able to say no to the proposal, because it's what they're thinking about. That makes sense?
Their words.
Yeah. Their words are in the proposal, not the consultant's.
Now, Richard, if I ask you to do the same exercise and say, what was your take from the reactions that you had from clients? Because I'm more than sure that you used exactly the same questions with the companies that are coming to you and asking the same kind of services. So how do I get a marketing campaign? What do you feel like they reacted to those questions?
If you're asking my reaction to Alan's answers, that was very, I mean, Alan knows what we do so well. So, he did a great job of acting as a client with, very general answers, and the challenges are very similar organization to organization. Alan picked a great example of, having to sort of corral a sales force in their efforts to help the company. That's not always the easiest thing to do. So yeah, that was very much a typical conversation. I would emphasize again, as Alan did, it would be a much longer conversation. I mean, that, the initial brief conversation with a client, particularly a new client, would easily be 90 minutes to 2 hours. It might span over a couple of sessions. I would take lots of notes and come back to them and say, this is what I thought I heard you say, and get confirmation on that before going to some kind of a recommendation for them for a marketing solution.
And don't forget that he or she might be a president of a larger corporation, and they're under a lot of pressure. So my answers were more along the lines of it's his company. But if you go to a president and she's getting pressure from the States or something like that, you want to get further into how would this work for the corporation, et cetera, et cetera. You're looking out into the environment around this person to find out what will be useful to them.
Richard, there's another beautiful question in the chat, and that is, was this a session to get more business from the client? If yes, what would those services be? Or are you talking to different leaders in the company, facilitating them to build their own solution?
This conversation would be for both, I think. In this case, in preparing for this, Alan and I were thinking more the former than the latter, that this was a session to get a new assignment from an existing client, or maybe an assignment from someone who isn't yet a client, who has invited me or I've initiated, just get together and talk and see if there might be an opportunity to do some work.
Cristina, let me show one more slide.
Please. And then we take one more question from the chat. There's another interesting question from Matt in there.
Thank you. Here's a typical change facilitation for strategic planning, where throughout the process you ask what's working, preferred future, first steps, etc. And look at what, with my, we've been just talking about this, the proposal. Then you put a core team to help the manager do the work. You do the workshops, or you interview stakeholders, etc., etc. And it goes on and on and on. And throughout this, it's like this drumbeat. Well, when you did that part of training in the past, you dive into the details. What worked? When you worked with suppliers before, what worked, and so on and so on. The point is that this is just the beginning of the process. Richard, do you want to comment on that?
I just want to build on that and sort of address what both Matt and John asked. Great questions. I sense that Matt and John, that maybe you're in the same business. That first question was very deliberate. That I said to Alan, when you've worked with consultants and vendors like this in the past, what's worked best for you? If this is a new business opportunity, I do not stand a chance going in. If the way I work, for example, is on monthly retainer, and I'm talking to an organization that absolutely does not pay monthly retainers, they only pay project fees, totally fine. It's pointless to pitch my monthly retainer to them. So I want to hear the procurement person say, we work on project fees, and we like this kind of structure, et cetera, et cetera. And then I know either, yeah, I can do that, and I'll pitch that, or not a fit.
Which is why you don't give them the proposal right away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I answered Matt's and John's question. I laughed, Matt, at your question because, yeah, I think you mentioned procurement. It's, procurement has played a much bigger role in marketing and advertising purchases in organizations, and it's created a wall there, and it can be hard to get through that. You really want to have a relationship with the user.
Can I show one more slide?
Please. I'm answering already to Vinay in the chat that yes, all materials will be made available.
Right away. Look at what we're trying to do through the same project, the strategic planning. Align the work with organizational and change project goals. You've asked the boss, what are your goals? What's the corporation's goals, etc. You're trying to establish commitment and action. Like we quoted at the beginning from ProSci, get them engaged in the process as opposed to just asking you to do it and handing it over to you. And that allows them and you to engage in the people in a meaningful way. So then you build commitment and action and so on. there's a whole bunch of other stuff about follow through, which we can talk about. This is in slides. I'm happy to share it with you.
Well, it's a wonderful conversation. I think there's a beautiful way of seeing exactly those words that we hear in therapy and in coaching, but you hear them exactly now in a corporate environment. And I think that's the takeaway. And that was the idea of the entire simulation, to hear those questions used in a organizational environment. We still have 2 minutes until the session ends, and I would really love to hear Richard and Alan just making a short summary of what just happened.
I'll just say one thing. Most of you may not have worked in corporations or whatever. Forget that. You've all done something in an organization at one point, whether you're a board member of a professional association group, etc., etc. And the board might decide the 5 staff need a strategic plan or whatever, some change management. You use this framework and just ask solution-focused questions throughout. You will be an expert in asking them once you get to understand what they're looking for. It doesn't have to be a big corporation. Yes.
I've done lots and lots of training over the years where I'm the only person in the room who isn't a social worker or a mental health worker and some kind or another. And they say, what do you do? And I say, I'm a marketing guy. And they go, oh, that's interesting. What do you do here? And I say, I take this language and I use it inside organizations and it works. So I would say to all the amazing solution-focused practitioners in SF24, talk to your friends in organizations and spread the word. We would have much healthier workplaces if more conversations were like this, and we'd have great relationships between clients and vendors too if briefs were like this.
And there's one more last thing. There's another, I would call it as an opportunity to take that conversation further, because there's a second question from Vinsome. I hope that I got the name right. How would this be applied to an educational institution? Yeah. And I definitely think that is worthwhile a full conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that conversation further with anyone. I do apply this to educational institution. I do work presently for Sheridan College, which is a large college in southwestern Ontario, and we use this language all the time, and it works well. And we have, I'll tell you what the clients have said to us. They've said to us, you guys ask great questions.
And I've done work with outfits like a group called Parkdale Legal Aid Clinic, which is funded by the major legal organization in Toronto. So you've got the influence of academia on what they do, but it's at the street level in a legal aid clinic in a pretty tough area where, and it's the same thing.
May I put an idea out there and we can work it out after that? How about in the context of the SF24 conference, we do after this or at some point in the next weeks, a recorded session and talk about how you would apply this in the educational institutions. Yeah. And we make that available after that with all of the rest of the recordings from this conference. So we would just do a separate recording without necessarily having it live. So we would have to work out between ourselves a time and a date. And after that, we just make it public and available to everyone with the rest of the recordings. That's and if great. There's any other questions after that, we can still pick them up. And worst case scenario, 2021, you can already put on the program. There has to be at least one session with the two of you talking about how do we use this SF language in educational institutions.
I'm going to agree with you and say that we've got to go, you and I, to start another session.
Yes.
Richard's given you his email in the chat and I put mine in. I don't know why I can't put the file in.
Bunch of emails that we could just had from Eventbrite and use that as a communication chain, as that would make our lives easier.
Richard, I apologize. I'm going to drag Cristina off.
Okay.
Session.
I'm going to go off. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks very much. Bye,
Thank
Cristina.
you very much, Richard.
Bye,
Thank you very much, Alan.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye for now.